Great. So we have a good crowd here today. I think we have a quorum to get going. We have an important meeting in front of us today. I'm very excited about it. Giving a sense of the legacy of making big decisions. The wall behind me is actually a Roman stone wall. It's a little bit of a flex. Sorry about that. But I'm here in Tuscany and found good Wi-Fi in a grotto. All right, so we have enough to get going. Hi,
Okay,
Stephanie.
so you throw out your hanging in Tuscany, and then you took. Okay, David.
We're just making it work here.
Just me. Okay, thank you.
All right, so wonderful. So let me pull up the agenda and we'll take a peek at what we're going to do today. Um, hey, Joey, good to see you. Let me just get this going. Everything is posted online as usual, and if it hasn't already been thrown in the chat, maybe Liz Amler or someone could throw it in the chat. With our materials. Here's our agenda. It's actually quite straightforward in the agenda aspect of this, but there's a little bit of nuance that I think we might want to talk about just for a second. We'll do our usual housekeeping. I hope there's minutes posted. We'll take a look at those. If people need more time, we'll do that in a second. Then we're going to take a chunk of time to work through any content issues. Again, the bar is quite hard. Excuse me, the bar is quite high at this moment. But any content issues on all this writing that's up on the website now, particularly the executive summary, a last look at the priority recommendations preamble, letter to the council, the scientific underpinnings of the emissions reductions is something I want to make sure folks have had a moment to look at. And in fact, I might do a little reading time on that one and others. And there's other new stuff that's gotten posted in the last few days, or new versions of things. So we're going to spend, let's call it an hour and a half or so, trying to go through that content. And anything that's rising up to like, oh, let's have a conversation about it, because it can get in the way of what we're going to do at the end of the meeting, which is try to approve this plan, the content of it. We'll break. We'll do public comment right now, scheduled at 1, as you can see. And then we're going to do an exercise to see if we can approve and adopt this plan, right? And the way we're going to be doing that is using our governance, what's in our governance document. We always try to seek consensus, but the way the GWSA was set up, this council has a majority voting as a possibility. So we'll use a voting protocol. I will set up as well a way for us to do that based on your requests. Do that in a sort of simultaneous way so I'll do a little Survey Monkey or something for counselors. And so you can all do it at the same time, and then we'll do a big reveal on that. So I know that having talked to several of you ahead of time, some folks are interested in explaining the way they're going to vote. And we offer that as a possibility of annexes. We're calling them signing statements. This time we'll just do signing statements. We sort of had 2 categories last time. This time we'll just do, if you want to say something about your vote in any way, you can do that. And some folks want to talk about that today, so we'll create some space for that too. We have a backup meeting, which I am hesitant to mention too loudly if we need it. My hope is we're able to get this done today. I think that's a realistic goal. And that as we end the day, we have a clear view of a plan that's either adopted or not adopted and needs more work. And we know what the next steps are and the formatting and the this and that, and how to use the next months as well to beautify. Okay, that's our agenda. Any questions? Yes, Jared, I saw your chat just now. Would like to add the revised conclusion to the walkthrough. Great. And I'm quite open if folks want to pull, say, oh, this just got posted the last few days. I have these thoughts on it. I'm happy to do that. Any quick questions on the agenda before we get going? Okay, great. And can folks hear me okay with this headset? Thanks, Karen. Okay, great. All right, so let's do our usual housekeeping of minutes. You can see they're clicked here. I'll let folks click through if you need just a second more. Let's give it a moment. Anyone who wants to click through and do a final scan on those? Okay. Anybody need any more time? Or anyone have anybody catch any problems with the minutes? Okay, great. Not hearing requests for more time or any concerns, let's treat the minutes as approved. Thanks, everyone. Okay. All right, Kelly, do you want to test your audio? See if it works this time? No, I'm silenced. All right, can others not hear as well? Shoot. I don't know what's going on today, Kelly. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. Great. Yeah, and I think Kelly, if it keeps going like this, you can do what Jane always had to do, which is just use the audio dial-in on your phone. And when you do that, Kelly, you can do it from Zoom with a little up arrow by the audio thing, so it matches your video with your audio. All right, folks, shall we dive in? I don't have a ton of order to this. What I'd like to do is a punch list of issues across different chapters or documents and just get a lay of the land of what people want to talk about in this hour and a half we have to work on content. So I think why don't I do my usual thing where I'll be like just taking note of like, oh, yep, this is an issue, we're going to deal with it. And let's make that punch list as quickly as we can, and then let's dive into it and see if we can solve those issues or get as close as we can to some resolution on those issues. So that being said, folks, I will actually, Lindsay, I think you're signed in two different places. That's usually what happens there. I will offer up this opportunity as well. If people would like, say 10 to 15 minutes for some reading, I'd offer that opportunity if that would be particularly helpful. I recognize we've been putting up, or Liz and Jane have been doing heroic service to get all this stuff up on the website, and it's a lot of text. So if anybody would like a little catch-up time, I'm more than happy to give 10 or up to 15 minutes of reading time right now, if anybody would like that. And no shame in saying I would really appreciate that, or that would make this conversation work much better for me. So let me quick pause. Any interest in doing 10 to 15 minutes of reading time right now? Yeah, thanks. Anyone? JL, is that a yes? I'd like that. Okay. How about 10? Does that work? Yeah. So why don't we all do that? And I will point folks either to the document that you care most about, like, oh, I didn't read the executive summary. I really want to make sure that's good. Or, oh, I haven't read that I want one more read on that scientific underpinnings piece. I'll do that. So why don't we do 10 minutes? It's 11 minutes past the hour right now. We'll go to 22 minutes past the hour, 23 minutes past the hour. Jane helpfully put in the chat right now the link to all the documents, right? You'll see that link as you go down. And folks, if you're joining our meeting as members of the public, great. Use this as your reading time as well. So I'll just go quiet for about 10 minutes and everybody jump in. If you have a question about how to get to a certain document, let me know. But let's do 10 minutes of reading. All right, folks, let's just take another minute or so and finish that last speed read. All right, folks. It's more like a tease when we do something like that, but I appreciate it. It is just the volume of text is quite shocking. So I, I I feel everybody's pain is trying to get through this and feel like you understand what's in there. All right. So I've been trying to monitor the chat. Carrick, first of all, are you being able to see what you need to see? Are you getting some errors still?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, great. I saw a specific suggestion from Chris Campany. I put that in my punch list. Oh, and I see more coming from Chris. Thanks. You know what I'm going to do with these, Chris? I'm just going to paste them right into my punch list, and then um, we can we can tackle them as we go. Great. So as I'm pasting Chris's pieces into my punch list, who else has something they would like to make sure the council looks at today ahead of our testing of adopting the plan this later in the meeting? Jared, I know you mentioned you had something in conclusions. Who's got something they want to put in a punch list? Joey, is that a hand up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's minor, but seems meaningful. So
Okay,
I
that's what we're here for.
should I suggest it now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I just in the executive summary, which I think was very well written, talks a lot about the impacts of climate disasters and all of that. I do feel like it would be important to add some context. I know that it is in the another section related to the economics, but I think another reason that we're advancing this plan and legislators put together GWSA is to move people off of imported fossil fuels, which are, as we know, highly price volatile, and we import them. So as people are probably well aware, our latest incursion into Iran has already started to shift the market. I just think it would be important to have a sentence or two in the executive summary that speaks about one of the reasons we're doing this work and the potential benefits of a clean energy transition and climate solutions is to move away from a price volatile global commodity market. So I would love to see something
Great.
in there, and we can lift it from the
Super.
other section.
Right, right. So we could grab from where we have that. Yep. Okay. Super. Again, we're not agreeing or disagreeing to stuff just yet. We're just typing it into a punch list, and then we can go back through and as a council figure out how we want to handle it. Kelly?
How's my audio? Is it better?
So good. You're
Can you hear
good.
me? Yay!
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. I had two things. One was a sort of a question, but maybe something to clarify. In the letter, from the council on line 27, the word should. I wasn't sure the meaning if it's that it is expected to happen or we want it to happen. So out of context, I know that's confusing, but a conversation about that. And then in the executive summary, I had a suggestion to rewrite lines 11 through 13, and I can drop that in the chat. It was like a run on and then a confusing sentence following the run on. So I'll put my suggestion in and see if it's like that.
Right. Thanks, Kelly. I'll pull it out of the chat and put it in my punch list. Yeah. Dahlia, over to you.
Yeah, I think this was in the executive summary, but in the part where we talked about the context, and apologies if I missed this at the last meeting that I wasn't present for. But I think it'd be cool also to speak to the fact that we are a role model, and it feels like we're like our motto of small but mighty. And maybe just I would be happy to write up a sentence or two just to fit somewhere in there about how kind of the world does watch what we do, and we have a role in inspiring other action as well.
Great. So in the executive summary, something about Vermont being a role model. And okay. And we may have something like that in the preamble language. We'll have to go look if there's something easy to lift, or we'd have to write something new. Okay. Jared?
Thanks, David. I have a number of comments on the scientific underpinning chapter. I'm happy to talk through them today. Eventually, it would be helpful to get a Word document. I'd seen a prior draft that I'd sent comments on, but I've only seen the PDF of the most recent version and would like to be able to put some comments and suggested track changes in that. I've got about 4 things in there. Either happy to run through some of those today or also get a Word doc and send those back.
Yeah. I mean, this is the way my brain works on this, Jared, is like substantive stuff we should deal with today. And then if there's like, oh, I can make this sound a little bit better, and you send that to Jane or, Brian or whoever, great. But I'd love to sort of feel like we all know substantively what we're doing today.
Well, some of it, I'm not sure if it's substance or tone. Just like, I'll just run through my list really quickly.
Please. Yeah, let's do that.
There's a table that's not labeled, so I don't really know what it's saying or trying to say. So would want to have that fixed to then know if it's, a copy editing thing or it's just hard to assess whether there's a substantive concern there. That's the table that appears between pages 3 and 4 on the scientific underpinning. We had also previously had a conversation about how the benefit cost analysis that was conducted by SEI did not include costs and benefits related to health. And there was a request that I made and others echoed for that to be added in. I don't know if that is being planned or not. If it is not, then I think we need an explicit statement in that chapter that the benefit cost analysis does not include estimated costs and savings related to health impacts, to make that clear that that's not included.
Okay.
And then just in terms of a plain reading accessibility standpoint, there are multiple places where the modeling speaks about negative costs. I think it is clearer and more understandable to label them as savings.
Great. Okay.
I
say great because I understand
less
what you're saying. Yeah. So I just want to make sure no one took my great to mean like great change. Great that I understand what you're saying. All right. So negative costs should be changed to savings. Okay. Super. All right. Anything else on that, Jared?
Nope, that's that.
Love it. Okay. I think that's clear, and we can work through those relatively expeditiously, I think. All right, folks. So anything else that we want to talk about today in all these documents? Anything that's rising up to the surface? Carrick?
I just wanted to, I'll try and one more strategy. I'm just going to restart my computer basically to try and make this work. This is something new. It's okay. Because I don't know and I couldn't just confirm, I had sent a couple of weeks ago. I did also miss last week's meeting. For the preamble, I had proposed an implementation plan language, and I just don't know where that proposed, and if we're going to get to that, where that sits.
Jane can help out because Jane helped put that language in. Yeah, the progress assessment chapter, it got put in. And if Carrick, you can't open that up, why don't I open it up in just a second when we go through that? But it's in there.
Okay. I'm up for us. It's in there for us to discuss.
It's in there. So if
Okay.
anybody has
All right.
trouble with it, it's up to somebody else to some degree to.
Okay. Thank you for making that clear. I'm going to go away and see if I can come back. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Carrick. All right. Anything else that should be on our punch list before we try to adopt the plan later?
David, I am trying to find my raise hand function.
Oh, sorry,
but
Lizanne.
it's not showing up, so I'm going to come on and make one quick comment. I was looking at the Ag and Ecosystems chapter, and I'm on page 4, and I just wanted to maybe make this as an overarching comment that as we're adopting this and making sure that there's connectivity across the entire plan, if we could just do one quick glance through and make sure that all of the chapters are referencing other chapters in the current plan. So for example, looking at page 4 in the Ag and Ecosystems chapter, if it could refer to the current climate and climate change chapter in this new plan rather than some older documents that have been superseded by understandings in the climate and climate change space.
Oh, good. Okay, so it's referencing an older version of something.
Yes, it's referencing 2021 information when we have 24 and 25 information in our current version.
Got it. Okay, nice. Anything else we want to put on our punch list before we dive into it? Yeah, Stephanie?
Sorry, I'm having a hard time finding my raise my hand button for some reason.
No worries.
It's just a little thing, but maybe I'm missing it, but I just feel like there's so much good language in here about what we're charged to do, and there's so much that's been so well thought through, all the actions. And like Dahlia, if we could couple maybe what she was saying with sort of what's the super objective in a positive manner, like what's our goal, and and really it's about our legacy, isn't it? About our future generations and safeguarding this state, the planet. But I'm not quite seeing that language, and I don't know if that's appropriate for a document like this, but just one sentence better worded than what I put in the chat. It's just a suggestion.
Great. So something around legacy and overall goal.
So we're hitting hard on the very real problems and the very real actions. I'm just wondering about I don't know. Sometimes I think that things, when you can focus on what you love, what you care about, maybe I should just use that term, what you care about, that's the common thread for all of us. I mean, I don't know that anybody would disagree with our goal to make things better for future generations.
Right. So it lifts it up a whole nother level of about caring, and it's not just about the specific pieces, but the overall sense of caring about the future.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay, let's see if we can do that in real time here today. Anything else? And feel free to jump off mute if you're having a hard time to raise hand. Joey?
Well, just a thought and then a question. So on the priority recommendations document, we did in a couple of places reference the exact recommendations. Should we make that consistent? Maybe like, for example, under support climate informed land use, we do talk about, I guess I just should we reference people to exactly what we're talking about in the plan so that they can.
Is it the top 10?
Yeah.
So it's partial right now?
Seems partial to me, but
Oh,
it's not a big deal. But I
maybe
just,
there's some hiccups on that. Yeah, I'll write that down. Like, let's make sure we look at that and maybe there was a question or something about how to make the reference. So we can sort that out.
and just two other questions, one sort of related. Can you remind me, or maybe others would benefit from this as well, how the sort of more detailed, like Excel documents with like the actual recommendations, those will show up in an appendix?
Yeah,
Real-
and they're posted right now. Maybe Liz Amler could throw them in the chat right now. But if you go down to the appendices and on that web page, you'll see the table and how it looks right now.
Okay.
And yeah, Liz, if you don't mind, or somebody throwing in the chat real quick.
Maybe it's in there and I just skimmed over it too quickly, but maybe it's helpful to point people a sentence or two to say for more detailed, for more details, see the appendix. So,
Yeah, yeah. And so, right. So maybe you're suggesting like in the priority recommendations chapter, like there's where we talk about there's a top 10 and there's a top 52 and there's more detail in the table. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought we were going to do that. And if that's not there, let's do that.
maybe it is, and I'm real sorry if it's.
You and me both need to look more closely. So let's double check and make a reference to the full table as well. Okay.
And then, sorry, I just have one more process question. And apologies if you've already said it in more detail. In terms of the sort of what we're going to do today, adopt the cap and the signing statements, speak more to that and sort of the timeline for that.
Yeah. So signing statements are an optional thing that each counselor can do to give a little explanation to, how they're adopting or choosing to adopt or not adopt this plan. And so we encourage them to be short, but it's just an opportunity to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. That's a little more nuanced than a yes or a no. And so in terms of timing, I think with Jane, if you can help me with this, I think we were saying July 1st, but I think there's some flexibility on that. So we're not feeling super stressed about when those come in. But Jane, if you have some thoughts about timing on signing statements, again, you can get together, a couple of you, and do them together, or you could do it by yourself as you wish. Jane?
Yeah, thanks for that, David. Yes, I think the best case scenario would be as the plan is formally due on July 1st, we would post the signing statements as appendices with it on July 1st. I agree though with David, and I think this is really for you all as a council to decide your discretion. I think it's okay. There's not to be hard and fast with that deadline, but that feels like the best case scenario. And I know that as we move to talking about adoption and test voting the plan today, we've already had counselors signal the interest in putting forward a signing statement, and know that Secretary Moore is going to talk about an administration signing statement today as an example of what they are planning to do, perhaps with other counselors as well. So I think they're talking about it now is good to understand when it's due, what the council's interest is around comfort of when that should come in, but also know that we'll probably talk about it a little bit more robustly as we move to talk about signing on to the plan today, right, David?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think if folks want to say a few words, maybe if, for instance, if you have sort of the sort of guts of a signing statement already in your mind or on a piece of paper, and you want to say a little bit about that prior to the adoption, the exercise to adopt the plan, we'll make space for that, right? And afterwards as well, we can make some space after we do the exercise to adopt for folks to say a little bit about what they might, if they choose to write something. Again, it's optional. It is not a mandatory part of this process. It's just an option. So if folks want to be able to provide a little more nuance and include it in the appendix of the plan. Joey, is that clear enough? Yeah, okay. Cool. Okay. I see in the chat, Jael saying a question about format. Some chapters list out pathways, others do not. Jane, yeah.
Sorry, before we move off of the signing statement, I did see Matt Coda raise his hand, so I wasn't sure.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see that.
He raised his hand actually.
Oh, yeah. Now I see it.
Just new guy question. Where do we send the signing statement to?
Jane or Liz Amler.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. All right. And then this comment from Jael about the consistency in the chapter. Some of them mention pathways, others don't use the terminology of pathways. Honestly, I don't feel super strongly at this point. I don't know if Jane or anybody else has a strong feeling about, that level of consistency across the chapters. Jane, if you want to say something, feel free. Or anybody else.
I don't feel strongly, and I think Liz and I did our best. Liz and I talked about this last week a bit to be more consistent with recommendations versus actions, but we have not done that across the whole plan. And I'd like to think that some of those minor inconsistencies are things that we can put together a punch list for the contractor who's just doing editing for us of the plan. And perhaps we can strive for consistency at that juncture as well. This is not to discourage if there are specific chapters you want us to go through, like to revise pathways and use something different, we can still do that. But there's also, for minor grammatical errors, consistency, things like that, we will have the ability to do that post July 1st to make the plan read a little more consistently like that for the average Vermonter.
Thanks, Jane. Okay. All right. Anything else before we dive into resolving some of these issues that came up in the punch list? Okay.
One last thing, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I will send some minor things in the punch list, like on the executive summary where one paragraph says action, like within 2 sentences, like 6 times. I will send that to Jane and Liz.
Yes.
And just,
Yeah. Language stuff like that, just pop it over. The same thing. And I saw Kelly had some typo catches, and we really appreciate that. And we don't need to worry about that here because I think that's just like making it look nicer and better English. And
then just really quickly on the executive summary on page 6, line 146, where it says identifying revenue sources that don't work against Vermonters' adoptions. I guess this is framed very awkwardly, I think. Don't work against. I just wonder if we can just make it say something more clear. I get what it's trying to say. It's an important point. But it's confusingly worded to me. And I also I'm assuming that is obviously electrification is a core thing that we want people to lean into. So the point is well taken, but it may not be the only things. I just wonder but I hesitate to put it out there because maybe it's like part of cleanup, but it feels substantive enough. I just wanted to raise it.
Okay.
It feels very awkwardly worded to me.
Yeah. I put it on the list here and we can take a peek at it and see if there's a quick fix or whether we all feel comfortable saying, somebody go off and like Jane go off and make it a little better English. Okay. Jael?
Sorry, it's loud behind me. So one thing that came up for me when I was first joined the council and was reading through the plan was not quite understanding what was meant by like pathway, strategy, and action. I think just some overview of like how to read the plan and what we kind of mean by like what the difference is between pathway, strategy, and action, just so people who are unfamiliar just have a clear idea of what we mean by those.
Yeah. So I love that. And I think it's there. The question is whether it needs to be more prominent, right? So it's in, and Jane, help me out, or Liz, it's in there's like a pivot chapter, right? From the initial set of chapters to the recommendations. I think it's there. Yeah, exactly. Because there's like 20 chapters. So it's there. I think it should be clear. And Jane, help me out to point me in the right direction there.
we put it in the chat, and so it is in there. You're right where it is. And we link the chapter right there in the chat, but happy to modify or move or do something different with it if people want that.
Okay. All right. Okay, folks, let's dive into some of this other stuff here and see if there's some decisions we want to make about it. So just so you all see what I'm working on, and I just have my one, I just have my laptop and another screen today, so it's a little trickier for me to do this and be able to see you. So here's my punch list, and let's work our way through it. The first ones I'm going to share my screen with just because there's some specific language that Chris suggested. So in the Building Equity into the Climate Action Plan chapter, there was a suggestion to add a bullet under the different sort of frontline impacted communities to those impacted by natural disasters. And Kelly, I know you've been involved in this. I saw you in the chat saying that sounds good to you. I guess any concerns about making that change in this equity chapter? I'm not seeing any concerns. Shout out loudly if you have them, because I can't see so many of you on my screen right now. Okay, so let's say, I'm just going to say yes. You'll see this sort of me doing this. Okay. Under the challenges faced by the Just Transition Subcommittee, I'm just reading this for the first time right now. Capacity and ability to engage sorry, I just need to move things out of the way. Capacity to engage with those impacted by climate events, especially catastrophic flooding, since the initial plan was adopted. Again, this is a suggested sentence, right, Chris, you're saying?
Right, just an additional bullet point under that
Yeah.
heading.
For those who've been deeply involved in this, any concerns about adding that sentence in? Sorry, there's some background noise.
I don't have concerns about that. Specifically, where I would want to put it would be there's a bold section that says capacity, and then there's 2 bullets, and I would say maybe the third one could be what Chris suggested.
Under the capacity.
Because we like bucketed the different challenges and so it was a little bit easier to digest. So not just like randomly throwing in another section, if that makes sense.
Sound good, Chris?
Yep.
Okay. Any concerns with that, folks? Great. All right. Next one is under suggested solutions to overcome challenges. Add a bullet, work with Vermont Agency of Human Services and local recovery groups to directly engage with disaster impacted communities about their climate adaptation and resilience priorities. Again, Kelly and others who've been most involved in this writing, how does that sound? And everybody else, of course, as well. Thoughts, concerns?
I think that makes sense. And it also would help. I mean, if we put in the thing we just said above, then we should have some sort of solution listed in the suggested solution. So I like that.
Great. Any concerns before I say yes here? Okay. Okay. Thanks, Chris. All right. So we're getting some other stuff here. I think I'm just going to keep sharing my screen if folks are okay with that. In the executive summary, add some context, like a sentence or 2 about moving people off price volatile fossil fuels is one of the reasons we're doing this. We have language about that both in the chapter, sort of the emissions reductions chapter, and elsewhere. Would anybody be concerned if we went and took a sentence or 2 that we already have elsewhere in the document about this idea and put it up in the executive summary? Secretary Moore?
I think there's like almost a page of introductory text in the cross-sector mitigation introduction that probably is better somewhere else in the report. And maybe it meets this need. Like there's this larger context piece that just feels a little out of place where it sits currently, and perhaps abbreviating it and moving it into the executive summary is a way to address two issues at once.
Okay. Could we take those as two steps? One as taking a sentence or two and put in the executive summary that speaks to this point of one of the reasons behind this, all this effort is trying to help folks make a transition away from price volatile fossil fuels. So that's a yes. And the second part of what you're saying is, do we make a change to the chapter? And I see Rich got his hand up pretty quickly. So Rich, thoughts on that? I'll say yes, adding yes, take from chapter, or synthesize from chapter. Rich, do you want to talk about the other thing? Although anyone else, feel free to chime in and not be comfortable with this, but Rich?
Yeah, I would say that the text just referred to was very carefully vetted in prior meetings. Both A&R and DPS submitted comments on it. A lot of those comments were reflected in the revised text already. And I think going through it again at this point is not necessary, and we'd be going backwards. So
Right. Yeah,
we already did it.
right. So you're uncomfortable making big changes to the chapter right now. I see a hand in the room.
Thank you. I just wanted to, as Secretary Moore reflected, moving something to the executive summary, just for the benefit of this discussion, wanted to remind the council what capacity we were bringing to the plan after July 1st. And a reminder that the whole plan's being proofread and grammatically edited, but there's only discrete components of the plan that will have sort of a heavier hand around editing, and which will be collaborated on with the council. But the main two sections that will have a plain language review are the executive summary and the priority action chapter, in large part because we felt like those two pieces of work are the sections that most Vermonters will refer to when they're looking at the climate action plan, and would also be the basis for the plain language summary of the CAP that we're committed to developing, so that we have a summary document to work with Vermonters with. So actually just wanted to highlight that if there's a place to make a case for something or think about a tool that will have more capacity brought to it for editing to support how we use it, the executive summary will be one of those places, whereas like the cross-sector mitigation, or sorry, the pathway, whatever we're calling that chapter, the pollution reduction introduction, won't have that kind of edit. So just wanted to flag that as folks are thinking about where language lives and sort of the power of chapters.
Okay. So can I piece apart a couple of these things? One is getting the price volatile fossil fuels in here. And I'm just trying to track the chat as well. And Kelly correctly notes that there is a mention of this. So let's, is it okay, just in the interest of time, we'll take a look at how it is in 140. If it needs to be beefed up a little bit with some extra content from the emissions reduction chapter, we can do that. The bottom line is yes, to make sure it's in there appropriately. So that's point number one. And then point number two is about the emissions reduction chapter. And I want to pause on that for 1 second because I saw Joey put her hand up.
Well, more to the first point, and I'm interested in the second.
Yeah.
I see what Kelly flagged. I'd seen that before, which I think is important, but it doesn't. I'm talking about the why. If someone just reads the executive summary, it needs to, I think, contextualize why we're doing this. It does a very good job of pointing to the disasters and the impacts. And I think just another significant reason why we're doing this is with the goal of saving people money and insulating them from being so tethered to an energy market out of our control. So I think it's different, and I'm happy to work with someone on it, and then turn it back to you to answer the second question, David.
Okay, great. So just to be clear, everyone, what we're saying, we're not going to be able to finish this and do it in real time today, But what we're talking about is that this sort of core storyline of the importance of making a transition away from price volatile fossil fuels is one of the reasons why GWSA has tasked the council to do this and what the council is doing. Folks are comfortable having that in the executive summary a touch more clearly than it is now. So that's point number one. So let me just pause on point number one. Any concerns about that and making sure it's in there in the way we're talking about right now? Julie, is your hand up about that?
Yeah, it is. I would just
Okay.
point to the economics chapter. Jared and I have some fairly carefully crafted language in there that makes that point, and maybe there's an opportunity to just excerpt from the economics chapter and bring it into the executive summary.
Great. So the economics chapter has it as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. All right. So if we're all good with this change, let's talk about the thing that Secretary Moore put on the table. I just want to circle back to you, Secretary Moore, for 1 second, which is seemed like a fair amount of discomfort in doing kind of a wholesale change and pulling some content out of the emissions reductions chapter. I wonder how strongly you feel about that, or whether that feels like, okay, I'm just curious how strongly you feel about it.
I'd say it's not a hill to die on, but I just it continues to stick out to me as being different than the kind of tone and approach we've taken in most of the other chapters.
Okay. I'm going to just, in my prerogative sort of facilitator here, suggest that that might be something we don't pick up and try to work on today. And it's ripe for, inclusion in a signing statement or something like that, if that's something important to say, if that's okay. All right. I'm just going to keep going down my list, and someone can help me in the chat if things are going on that would be helpful, because I have a few, just don't have the space on my screen to see everything. So there, in the letter, there is a word should on line 27 that caused Kelly some questions of what are we actually saying with that word should? Like, I don't have that handy. If somebody has that open, I could share my screen in a second with that. Does anybody know what that should is there for? I could answer Kelly's questions quickly to see if we need to do anything. Feel free to jump in. I'm clicking through and looking at it. So just unmute yourself and start talking.
And to clarify, I think since I wasn't sure what the meaning was intended to be, I wonder if we should replace it with something that's more clear.
It's this line
or if
about
everyone else
should,
is like, this is obvious.
right, should also spur a continuation and deepening of multi-stake and regional collaboration. That should?
Yeah, so I was like, is this expected that this is just going to happen, or is this like, let's go out and do this, let's work with other states, let's make a plan, or try to do, right? Is this a recommendation or an expectation that will work with other states?
Yeah, I think it's I welcome folks who helped to write this,
Yeah,
but go ahead, Jared.
I think I wrote that, and apologies for the lack of clarity. I think the needle that I was trying to thread, or the balance trying to achieve, is that some of that work is ongoing, and so hopefully it continues, but new challenges and opportunities may also necessitate kind of additional or new collaboration. So I think what I was trying to do was speak to it should continue, and we should identify opportunities for greater or deeper collaboration. So maybe that's kind of why the language is unclear, because I was trying to speak to both.
What if we eliminated the whole should aspect of this and just said, and also spur?
Quickly,
Sorry.
what line are you on?
27. I'll share my
Are you
screen.
able to share? Yeah, thank you.
I got it.
So we're down here, and I think it's just the should tripped us up, so we could even get rid of the dash and everything and just say this will put additional pressure on state-specific action and also spur a continuation and deepening of. Does that get it what we're trying to say? Or are we saying we want it to
That's-
spur?
That's fine. I mean, I think if we change it that way, it ends up being more of a a prediction. Uh,
So I mean,
Or
another option would be like, and would likely also spur, or
you could say necessitate, something like that.
yeah. Yeah, I
'cause, I
would,
mean, you say continuation, right? It's still, we're doing it already and we should do more of it, is I think what that's getting at maybe, but that was where I was wanting
I
to
would be
clarify.
comfortable with and necessitates rather than and should also spur.
So let me show
And
you
that would,
what,
that would resolve my concern.
yeah,
I think so.
right. It would be clearer. And so let me share what this looks like. Again, I'm just trying to move fast here, folks. And I apologize if it feels a little too fast. But this would what it could look like, right? This will put additional pressure on state-specific action and necessitate a continuation and deepening of multi-state and regional collaboration.
I'll just note from my vantage point, it already, the change in federal administrations has already on a number of fronts precipitated greater regional collaboration with like-minded partners. It's
Right.
underway.
Yeah. So this sentence feels right. Yeah. Okay. Any concerns with changing it to this sentence? Great. Thanks, everyone. Good catch, Kelly. Appreciate that. Okay, Kelly, someone had a rewrite on this. On lines 11 to 13, this is what the rewrite would be. Kelly, remind me why you did this, just to be clear.
Yeah, so so the sentence that starts way up on line something much smaller, a single digit number.
Yeah.
It goes on and on and on. And I got to a point where I was like, I don't know where we are. So I would end line 10 with a period, because it's like a list of things, and then start line 11 with a new sentence that just basically, I think, says the same thing. And then the sentence following that was just confusing to me. I think it might just have been missing some, because it was like a not a full sentence and then a semicolon and then a full sentence. And so I wanted to run this by folks because I didn't like it. Does this help? Does this make sense? And I don't know, I can drop in what it says right now if that would help.
In the dangers of the group edit, right? I think one of the things we could do right now is just everybody look at this change and be like, any red flags? If there's no red flags, and Kelly's done a nice job of cleaning this up and making it more readable, let's just say yes. But let's do a quick red flag check here. Anything that's being said here raises any concerns?
1 second. I'm gonna put it in the chat. So just to say it out loud, the only word there that gives me pause is the word natural. It suggests that it just is happening. I think that we could delete it or add the word predictable.
Okay, I just deleted it. Kelly, sound good? Okay, great. Any other red flags on this? Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kelly. All right. So next this is the about Vermont being a role model. We have some language in the priority action preamble language that talks a little bit sort of like Vermont's scrappy can-do, profile of characteristics. Is there, maybe we can grab from that, or does somebody have a particular idea about this, or does anybody have an idea how to just sort of say yes to something like this right now? Dahlia, were you thinking about kind of the language? I can try to find that language quickly about that we have in the preamble. And we can
Yeah,
take a
I
look.
might have been actually reading the preamble where it was talking about the can-do attitude. But I think upholding the can-do attitude and also saying like that attitude inspires other. It can literally be a sentence. But yeah, if we can pull from somewhere else, that would be super helpful.
Great. So the introduction to priority actions has a sort of, as we say, as we undertake this work, we recognize that Vermont, let me share my screen. If we could just do a little paraphrase of this, perhaps that gets at it.
Yeah, I read that and that looks great.
Okay. Any concerns with doing this or some version of this in the exec sum as well? Any concerns with folks to do that? Okay. Great. Let's do it. Thanks, Dahlia. So that brings us to the next one. And I've been having a hard time tracking exactly what's in the chat on that. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to paste in this this language here. So this is the one about legacy, and I know Stephanie, you had some thoughts on this. Do you want to just say that verbally for a second of
Sure.
like where, like the latest thing you're talking about?
If this is too woo-woo, I understand, but so in the chat, I just made a suggestion, something to play with. At the heart of our efforts is a commitment not only to fulfill the obligations of the GWSA, but also to ensure Vermont remains a vibrant, healthy place for current and future generations alike. You could just stop there, or we could go on to say something like, imagine the hope and confidence this will inspire in our youth, knowing that a strong, forward-thinking plan is in place to actively protect their future. It's just that this is what I constantly find in my community is a lot of people feeling helpless. It's not just the youth, but a lot of youth feeling helpless. And so it's that psychological component as a goal. You know, how uplifting would that be for all of us, really? But so something about that. Maybe this isn't the correct place to put that, but something along those lines.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thoughts, Julie?
I like the first sentence, and just I guess struggle a little bit more with the second sentence, and we'll get into some of that with the signing statement I want to share later, but just I don't think this plan is a direct leap to implementation. And so that second sentence gives me a little pause, but I do like the idea of the first sentence about this isn't just about the Global Warming Solutions Act, but that larger purpose statement that Stephanie offered.
So I wonder, just in the spirit of getting this in here, I wonder if we take that first sentence. Any concerns with adding the first sentence that's in the chat? That 5:55 p.m. chat from Stephanie. At the heart of our efforts is a commitment not only to fulfill the obligations of the GWSA, but also to ensure Vermont remains a vibrant, healthy place for current and future generations alike.
It's only 11:55 a.m. here, David.
Oh, sorry. Right, 11:55. Yes.
Had the same reaction, Jules. Had the same.
Sorry. My bad. Okay, so
I don't know if we need the word alike, by the way.
yeah, maybe it's just okay. So we drop the word alike. I'll show you what it looks like. Give me 1 second on the, I'll share my notes. All right, here are my notes. At the heart of our efforts is a commitment not only to fulfill the obligations of the GWSA, but also to ensure Vermont remains a vibrant, healthy place for current and future generations. Any concerns about that? Sounds great. Nice suggestion, Stephanie. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the scientific underpinnings chapter and some of Jared's things here. I saw some action in the chat, but I wasn't able to fully track it. JL, do you want to talk about that, or you have something else to say?
I had something to say about the executive summary.
Okay.
Just adding in something about the impacts on the livelihoods of those in the forest and agriculture sector, like line 12 of the executive summary.
Okay.
I just,
okay.
I didn't see, like, even in the ag and eco chapter, there wasn't a lot about like the impact of livelihoods of those people in those sectors. So I just wanted to see it somewhere.
Okay. Does anybody have a concern if we're able to slot a sentence in there that just mentions in the context of that sentence impacts on livelihoods in the farm forest sectors? Any concerns about doing that? Okay, thanks, JL. Let's do it. Okay. All right. Okay, shall we get into the scientific underpinnings here? So the table, I saw there was some back and forth on the table. Jared, are your concerns assuaged on this table at this point, or is there still more to talk about there?
I want time to review it. I didn't see labels on the, it may have been a formatting issue but I want time to go through those numbers and labels. So I don't know if it's addressed. I don't think it can be addressed right now. I think it's something that needs some time to go through.
Okay, just to be clear though, we're going to be doing an exercise to adopt the plan in the second half of this meeting. And so I think if there's anything that needs to be done right now that impacts the way you want to approach that exercise of adopting, let's deal with it now, or take a moment, or after the break or something.
Yeah. My concern is not about on this voting for or against the plan. It's making sure that it's presented kind of clearly and accurately. So
would other counselors be okay if Jared and Brian work to make sure this table is presented accurately? Would that be okay with counselors? Any concerns on that?
I don't mean to suggest that it's not. It wasn't clear to me. So it's more that it's presented clearly, and then once it's clear, just to do a double check, as we always should, around accuracy.
Got it. Okay. Michelle?
I would suggest, because that table, the one thing in clarifying the table a little bit, I thought it would be helpful to have the targets listed near the top of the table, so it's easy to sort of reference back and forth when you're looking at the elements of the table. And I think perhaps if we could get a before and after version of the edits to the table, and if anybody feels uncomfortable, then perhaps we don't make edits to the table. But I do feel uncomfortable about anything other than clarifications being left to after the adoption of the plan.
Right.
Agreed.
Thanks.
Okay. You all can see what I'm typing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that feel like an okay path forward for everybody on the council for this particular issue? Okay. I saw in the chat on this one a yes, right? Because in terms of including a statement, that it's not included in there. And so there can be a statement added if I saw that correctly, right, Jane? I can't see Jane, but that's okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to get off mute, but that's already in there, and I put in the chat, I directed Jared where it is in it. So no, nothing needs to change, in my opinion. So
Oh, I see. So it's there.
yeah.
What I saw was a statement that health costs are a component of the social cost of greenhouse gases, those health impacts related to climate change and climate disruption. However, there are other health benefits, respiratory benefits, others in terms of improved comfort and air quality relating to weatherization and reduced combustion of fossil fuels that result in health savings that SEI said were not included in the benefit cost analysis. And so I think that there's an important distinction between health costs that are included in a social cost of greenhouse gases as related to climate change versus health, the costs and benefits of different health impacts of the mitigation scenarios to Vermonters, which my understanding is those are not included, and we should, ideally they would be included, but if there's not time and they're not going to be, then we need to explicitly say that the benefit cost analysis is incomplete because it does not include those health costs and benefits.
Yes, it is not going to be added. What is done. And Brian, my apologies, he's online and I thought that's what he responded to because that was my understanding of what had been added. But if it's not there, Brian can put it in the chat and we can certainly have that.
Okay, so getting back to it, so yes, add this explicitly about health costs, sorry about my typos, about health costs not being incorporated into benefit and cost analysis of measures. Is that fair? Okay, Rich?
Well, the way I heard Jared discussing it, it's that the health benefits
Oh, excuse me, the health benefits. Yes, that's the right word. Yeah.
of certain policies, for example, health benefits from weatherization were not included. I think one sentence could probably take care of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Any concerns about putting that in, folks? Okay. Great. Finally, any last one about where we refer to negative costs. Can we use the word savings? This is above my pay grade about this, but just checking in with those who are in the know. Can we switch to a more plain language thing like savings? Okay.
I think we
Rich.
should.
Great. Yes. Let's do it. Okay. Let me just quick cut and paste from the chat what Jane had done, right? That seemed to be hitting the spot. Hang on just 1 second. You're getting full like sausage making here, everybody, because I want everybody to see exactly what we're agreeing to, because this will be important as we take our next steps later in the meeting. Okay. Great. So that gets us through the scientific underpinnings piece. Carrick's implementation language, it's in there. If anybody has any concerns about it, jump. But it's in the what's the name? What's that chapter called? Sorry, come on, brain. Jane, what's this chapter called? It's called the progress assessment, assessing progress.
Progress assessment and implementation.
Okay, I'll just do it lowercase. Great. Ag and ecosystem. All right. And this is, and I've seen Leslie Ann put some other things in the chat and I haven't fully digested that. But here is an opportunity, for instance, on page 4 to make sure we have the most updated reference to data and information. That seems like a no-brainer. Anybody have concerns about updating that? Updating our reference in the Ag and Ecosystem chapter on climate. I think it's the climate impacts piece, right, Leslie Ann?
Yeah. So David, it's referring to the climate and climate change chapter in our plan right now, which has 2025 data and interpretation in it. So
great. Super. Any concerns on that, folks? And then since we're on this, Leslie Ann, let me just grab out of the, you had put something else in the chat. Can you just signal what that is? It's in the letter. There it
Right.
is.
So I was looking through the letter, and there was a paragraph that was talking about federally declared disasters and highlighting Washington County. And I think it's another instance where we can again refer to the climate and climate change chapter, where there is a specific map in there that was pulled from National Centers for Environmental Information. It shows you risk and hazards and disasters by county. And the county that actually is the highest in the state of Vermont is Windsor County, then followed by Rutland County, then followed by Washington County. And the folks who put +1 and +2 in there kind of know that those are the ones that they always see a lot in their shop. So again, another way to sort of crosswalk and crosstalk across the plan itself.
Thanks. That sounds great. Jared?
Leslie, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense is that part of it is the distinction between what has happened versus what is projected to happen. And I wonder if we want to reference both the backward-looking data that is currently cited and then move to the forward-looking data in terms of risks. But my sense is that what is in there right now is correct. It's just that it may seem a little bit incomplete without the addition of what you're saying, which I would support.
And there's one additional piece to what you just said, Jared, and part of it is if you only look at a small time frame, you'll get a different county being the one that's highlighted. Whereas if you looked at all of the federally disasters that were declared, you'd get a different county.
Oh.
So
It's just citing
that's
directly from that report, not making a
Right.
choice about time
right.
frame.
So it's a period of record, the totality, the subtle nuances. Because what we don't want is to have somebody walk away and say, oh, Washington County is the worst in the state, when it may not be, if you look at the entire suite of what it is we need to be talking about.
So I'm tracking here. There's two options here, or more than two, perhaps. What I'm hearing you say, Leslie Ann, is swap out what's in there now to show like all hazards, and therefore you get a bigger picture, and you'll get those counties that you show there, Windsor, Rutland, and Washington, right? So that
Or
would
you
be
could see,
swapping out.
For example, if you can say, for example, during the period 2021 to 2024, Washington County emerged as the highest number of federally declared disasters, while still keeping the frame that you need to look at Windsor County, Rutland County, and Washington County in that order to really get the true picture. Because what I don't want to have happen is for folks to say, oh, my county wasn't mentioned, I'm okay. And that sort of goes counter to building resilience and working through adaptation.
Got it.
I wonder if another option would just be to note Vermont's presence on the list of the highest federal disaster, climate-related disaster costs as a state, and not get into county by county discussion to avoid that altogether.
And if we do that, maybe we should check to see if the methodology did it on a per capita basis or a per population basis.
What's your email?
Could someone mute David Grass's line, if you don't mind? Okay. So where do we land? Sorry, I missed it for a second. So
that's okay. What I can do is I can actually dig a little bit deeper and see if I can come with some specific language to pop into the chat that would help capture all of the things that we were just talking about.
Okay. Does everybody feel good about that? All right, so we'll come back to this as we're later in this meeting, give you a little time to find the right language. Okay. No worry, David. All right, moving along. So on the priority recommendations document, make sure that all the top 10 recommendations reference the longer text in the top 52. And then we also should reference the fact that there's a fuller set of recommendations in the table, and we can link to that. That seems like what we intended to do. So if it didn't do that, Um, I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable that that's the intent, right? It's like, we're talking about our priority actions. Our top 10 is going to link to the top 52. And then we're also going to say there's a table with a more complete set of recommendations at the end of the report. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, great. We'll make sure that gets done. This is one I just pasted in from the chat. Jane answered this, and I think we said we're okay for now. Can do some cleanup after if needed. Does that work for everybody? I'll let the disaster thing keep rolling for a second in the chat and let Jared and Leslie Ann figure it out what's going to happen. Okay. Final thing on my punch list here is identify revenue sources that don't work against, right? That was causing some, questions if there's a better language option that. Again, and I think this is Joey was saying it, and indeed the intent here is, be careful about things that get in the way of electrification. Quick check-in with folks. Any quick ideas, or do you want to delegate this to somebody? Say, go fix it. Kelly?
I just dropped an idea in the chat, and I also believe this wording is in 2 chapters. So I'm going to try to figure out which. So this is line 146. This is talking about the executive summary, I think.
Actually, I don't know what document we're in. It's a good
yeah,
point.
I know. Page 6.
Is this the exec sum?
And I'll figure out which the other chapter is also and drop that in the chat. But if people like my suggestion in the chat, then
yeah, I know Rich
I'll
probably
figure
has
out
some
where it
thoughts on this. Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I think Rich has some nuance here that you might want to bring into this. Is that why you raised your hand, Rich?
Yes. I would think the language that is on your screen, David, is better. Revenue sources that don't work against is actually more complete than Kelly's, because it might be important to take actions that are paid for within the power system itself. For example, renewable electricity, or paying for line upgrades, or paying for batteries behind substations. There's a lot of things that could marginally add to the price of electricity while actually supporting the climate transition that we're trying to promote. So it's just too simple to say, don't raise the price of electricity. I think don't work against allows a little push-pull within the sector.
Thanks, Rich. Joey?
I appreciate Kelly's suggestion, but definitely agree with Rich's point, and also think that, I think the goal is to, try to keep electricity costs and rates as low as possible as we lean into our electric sector far more significantly, but not raising the cost. I mean, I just don't want, likely the costs are going to rise no matter what we do on all energy sources, or that at least they will fluctuate. So I just don't want to hold electricity to a higher bar than other things. So maybe it's not confusing to others. I get the point, and I'm very much supportive of the general premise. Keep the cost of things, especially the things we want people to do more of, as low as possible. So maybe I'm just the only one confused by it, and it's fine. And I'm happy to retract my suggestion. But you
Can I test something with folks, which is, instead of having what feels a little bit like a double negative, what if you use the word support, right? Identify revenue sources that support Vermonters' adoption and implementation of key climate actions. I don't know if that's I think there was some intention of being like, don't make it worse, right? Like, don't work it against, right? But I'm just curious how people feel about that.
David, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Although if we do,
Can I
we
flag
would
though?
change the end of the
Read,
sentence.
yeah, read. Yeah.
Oh,
So
right,
I had
right.
to say, I was confused. I was confused just like Joey, and it was that end of the sentence, the way that the sentence was written, having that at the end confused me. But I also understand what Rich was saying. So, I mean, possibly we just remove that bit entirely, because I think
Right.
that doesn't
Right.
meet the goal that Rich was talking about, which is saying, you know, maybe electricity prices could be incrementally, you know, or like whatever, like that we just want to make sure that nobody is, yeah. And then Jane just dropped something in the chat.
Yeah. So I think we have a good solution here and appreciate Jane's point. So fix it in both places.
Nice. Okay.
I'm sorry. What is the solution? Because the idea, I remember it was a part of the utilities letter to the council. It was a comment I had. I liked Kelly's version. I thought it just simply reordered, Rich, what you had. So I want to make sure we don't lose something. Thanks.
Yeah. So in that spirit, Liz, I wonder if there's anything to be said about, you know, continuing to push for electrification, for instance, by continuing to
Yeah, the point
push for
I recall-
electrification.
Yeah, the point I recall in the utility letter, which in general is of course supportive of programs that do that, is to make sure it's done in a way that doesn't hinder climate action unintentionally by raising the cost of electricity, you know, whatever you want to call it, more than appropriate. So I actually think the conversation that Kelly and Rich and Joey and all were having in the first place is more appropriate than dropping out the cost of electricity there. I would either revert to the original or read again Kelly's alternative, potentially Rich, because I do believe it captures the point he was making too. And I'm supportive of either of those two versions. Thanks.
Right. So just in the spirit of like just trying to make progress here, I'm throwing some ideas on the table. Feel free to get rid of them. One way to do this is identify revenue sources that support the adoption and implementation of key actions, such as adoption of electric heat and transportation, avoiding sources that hinder electrification. Oh, sorry, I'm making a mess. I don't know. I mean, I feel like
David,
yeah.
I respectfully just don't think that your version of including
Yeah.
support gets at what the point of the original sentence was. So
Got it.
I suggest rather than that solution, we go back to the sentence as originally framed and determine whether there's an order issue or a way of tweaking it to address what I think was Joey's original point on, you know, potential double negatives without dropping what I think are the important points of that, which is support electrification without unnecessarily raising the cost of electricity in such a way that actually hinders what you're trying to support.
So maybe Liz and I can come together on this easily because she said the word unnecessarily raising the cost of electricity. And I would, if you added unnecessarily at the end there, David, before raising.
Okay. Let me just, before I do that, because it's this real-time edit thing, it obviously gets in trouble, but this came up only because of some concern about this not being clear.
Oh,
and I
okay.
guess my question at this point is it clear enough that we've, you know, we did some thoughtful edits to get to this place. And so maybe we just hang in here with this don't work against and not try to rework it in real time, because it is a sensitive thing that we spent a bunch of time on.
Yeah. Liz, how about if we just put unnecessarily raising the cost of electricity? I think that adds clarity, and I think it is the point you're making.
Yeah, I like Kelly's rewrite that she just offered.
Me too.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
fine too.
Now, someone said that Stephanie's hand is up. Did I miss that? Apologies, I can't see well.
It's okay. I was just, When I was reading that sentence, if you take out the middle parenthetical, it says identify revenue sources, and essentially it says identify revenue sources that don't work against blah, 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 by raising the cost of electricity. That's why you have to have unnecessarily, because you took out the, do you know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
think it's a great idea. That's all. And thank you for the direction on how to raise my hand.
It changes every other update. So, all right. So I've just pasted in here something in the chat, and I believe Liz say, I like Kelly's version in the chat. So I'm just putting this in here now. Rich and others, Joey, how's this working? Is this a good change?
I think Kelly's revision is fine.
Great. Any concerns around what it's in the blue text now?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Your head.
Good. Okay, so we fix it in both places.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. All right, so that gets to the bottom of my
Adoption
list.
twice in there, right? Adoption of implementation,
Oh,
actually, such as such as electric heating and transportation options. Yeah. Okay.
thanks. Better. Okay. All right, folks. So this is the end of my list of things that you said that you wanted to talk about, and we have a blue text for all of them. Why don't we just look through it real quick? And hang on one second. Let me clean up my screen. I just have a
David, before we
Yeah.
leave that, can you go back to that sentence? I think we can't just remove the word adoption. I think we would just need to replace it, such as transitioning to electric heating and transportation options. Does that work for folks? I didn't want to just run so fast away from that.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Comments on the conclusion track. Let's go there. What you got, Jared?
Yeah, so there's some language in there that I thought at the last meeting we had agreed to delete. And just to set some context here, just to share kind of where I'm coming from, and I wonder if others share this same kind of outlook and approach, is that I see our responsibility as a council as identifying the recommendations to advance that can meet our commitments across the board. However, we are not an implementation body, as I think Carrick's good addition spoke to, in that there are important next steps regarding implementation that both the legislature and the administration will have to take. My concern is that in the conclusion, and so I think it's best to say, here's what the recommendations are, and next steps by the legislature and by the administration are necessary. Once we take that next step of saying, there's some language, and if you can pull it up, David, there was
Sure.
some language about, necessary support of the legislature that felt more like an administration message to the legislature rather than just an objective kind of, here's what the recommendations are. We agreed that let's stop it. There will be legislative and administrative action necessary rather than. So I would suggest, so in that second paragraph, I would suggest deleting either everything after the first sentence, and so that first sentence goes to the third paragraph, or delete everything after plan, so that both are referenced. My concern with the last two sentences is twofold. One is that it's saying that the agency needs resources from and support of the legislature. I think that there is a political and legal disagreement about that. I mean, my understanding is if you look at other states that have advanced reporting rules, some of those have done those under their existing executive authority without action by a legislature. And there are also multiple timelines within the GWSA around rulemaking. And so it feels odd to me in that previous sentence to pick out one in particular. So my suggestion would be to, again, either delete sentences, everything after the first sentence of the second paragraph.
So you're saying delete all of this?
Yep, and then just have that first sentence go into the third paragraph, or to delete everything after climate action plan in the third sentence. I would be fine with either of those. I think
Wait, sorry. I know I missed that last part. Like all this?
Yeah. Down to the end of the paragraph. Either of those would work for me. I am uncomfortable feeling like we're taking a position in terms of a conversation between the legislature and the administration around responsibilities for implementation. I think we're on safer ground when we just say these are the recommendations that are responsibilities for both branches of government and leave it at that.
Okay, I think the intent here, and we did talk about leaving this part in, is to say that there are no rules being put forward in this plan under the timeline of July 1st, 2026. And we thought it was important to state that, right? Because that's one of the potential outcomes here. And we're saying that's not what's happening here.
Is that ANR is not currently putting forward rules under that time frame. Again,
right. This climate action plan is not calling for rules under that time frame.
The climate action plan is putting forth recommendations that could either be advanced legislatively or via rulemaking, and the timelines are often going to be outside of our control.
If I could, that July 1st deadline is explicit to any rules called for in the climate action plan. Like there's a very clear obligation that is different than our other rulemaking work. If the climate action plan includes a requirement or an implementation step that ANR has to take through rulemaking, it has to be completed by July 1st of next year. And I do think that that's a factual statement, and I think it's important here.
So
I'm trying to tease out what's the concern, Jared, so we can target the concern and leave in the sort of factual statements about the rulemaking coming out of this plan under the timeline of, triggering a timeline of July 1st.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this language would work. I mean, maybe we just have a difference of opinion about legal interpretation. My understanding is that the council's responsibility is to put forward recommendations, and those recommendations can either be advanced legislatively or via rulemaking, and the timelines for those depend on the underlying law. So
just to test then, if we were to redo the second paragraph, we would use the first sentence, right? And then use what you just threw in the chat, and then call it and then that's it. Is that what would be an option here? I can show you what that looks like.
That last sentence in Jared's alternate needs adjusting, right? It's not that there are no rules being put forward by ANR. It's that there are no rules recommended in this climate plan subject to that timeline.
I'm not comfortable with that because a number of these recommendations are worded such that they could be advanced in multiple avenues by legislation or by rule. And we're not explicitly saying the pathway that they need to take. So to me, it's better to state the fact, if ANR is not currently proposing rules or planning to propose rules on that timeline, then let's say that. But a number of these recommendations could be advanced by rulemaking, or they could be advanced by legislation. So I don't think it's appropriate to say that, rulemaking will not happen.
I'm not saying rulemaking will not happen, but I think you're creating potential legal jeopardy for the agency in the way that that's framed, and that you're indicating we are exercising discretion to not do rulemaking directed by the Climate Council. Like, if the Climate Council is looking for rulemaking, it needs to be made explicit, because there are these other requirements that fall to us if the climate action plan directs ANR to engage in rulemaking. And leaving it open to interpretation creates a lot of legal risk for the agency from my perspective. Unacceptable legal risk, honestly.
To me, it is clearer and safer to work with the statutory language rather than putting the council in the middle of kind of a political or a legal debate. I mean, my read of the Global Warming Solutions Act is that ANR has the responsibility to ensure that the Global Warming Solutions Act commitments are met. And then there is a question to what degree that happens via legislative action and what degree that happens through rulemaking. That is a combination of, that is an ongoing conversation between the administration and the legislature. I'm not comfortable saying that ANR should not engage in rulemaking on any timeline.
John's going to need
Hey, but there's an open mic here. Somebody said, I think it might be David Mears. Okay. So this feels, I got to admit, Jared, I'm a little confused myself on this, because I understood that there was some clear agreement that under the timeline that would trigger July 1st, 2026, that these set of recommendations were not triggering that timeline. It doesn't mean that there's no rulemaking going forward. Rulemaking will be part of any, the implementing of all these strategies going forward potentially. But under that timeline, there was nothing in here triggering that. Unlike in the last plan, where it was very explicit, where it said, yeah, this is triggering rulemaking on, advanced clean cars too, and et cetera. So that's why I'm confused with this. Rich?
So how do you say, a language point and a legal observation. The last sentence here, discretion is given to the agency. That's passive voice. It's totally unclear whether it's a statement that the council is saying, we give the ANR discretion to decide what to do, and we don't, it's whatever they want, or whether we are making a legal observation about what we think the statute says. So I would say written in the passive voice here is confusing, number one. Number two, it involves us, depending on how it would be interpreted, it involves us making a legal observation about what the law actually requires. So I would just delete that last sentence.
Okay.
And I'm in agreement, with Secretary Moore that, the prior statements are factually correct, the previous two sentences.
Great. So Rich, you're uncomfortable with that last sentence because it feels
I
kind of
would
like
just take out
legalese
the-
and like, why are we getting into legalese? Right. Okay.
I would take out the last sentence.
Right. But the prior sentences are factual and understandable in the context of the recommendations of this document.
I believe so.
Okay. Thanks, Rich. Matt?
I just want to say I agree with Secretary Moore, and I would say to anyone listening that if they don't think we're part of a legal or political debate, they haven't been paying attention.
Thanks, Matt. Joey?
I wonder if we pursued Rich's recommendation, get rid of that last sentence, could we then just say something more broadly that, Jared sort of just said it, the council's not putting forward recommendations for combination of legislative and or rulemaking, but anticipate, or that we anticipate it could be a combination of legislative action and potential rulemaking, so that I understand what Secretary Moore is saying. I also appreciate Jared's point that we want to be clear with people that rulemaking may happen. It may not happen on the July 1, 2026 deadline. So potentially we just add a sentence that says both of these things are likely on the table and needed.
So, right. So
Sorry,
go ahead.
David.
Yeah,
I
go
just-
ahead.
I think the first sentence in the paragraph gets at that, and maybe we go back to Jared's original proposal to just delete everything after the first sentence. To me, that last sentence is important in that the work required to stand up that reporting rule, we've gone through and done an analysis. It's more than an FTE. And so I can't commit to doing that absent resources being provided for that work. That's what that sentence was endeavoring to convey, that there just shouldn't be a blind expectation that we're going to move into the rulemaking for a reporting rule absent having capacity to actually do the work.
Just to be clear, so there's a suggestion of removing that last sentence the way it's written. Julie, you just explained why it was in there, right? There's a request that if we leave in this factual information that through the first sentences, not the final one, that Joey, you're saying just flag, whether it's in that first sentence, right? Where you can say a combination of legislative and administrative action, such as rulemaking, right? Right, so you could put that up there. But keep the factual information that there's no current rules being put forward under the July 1st, 2026 timeline. Right, so
I mean, it's also kind of in the beginning of that sentence in the following paragraph, which notes that there are rules for the legislature or the administration to advance actions through legislative action and rulemaking. So
yeah,
to me, it
yeah,
feels,
it's in the next sentence. Yeah, you're right.
which is why I had originally suggested we just, delete everything after that first sentence of the second paragraph and go right to there. So we're presenting this balanced viewpoint of there's a role for both without getting into a greater degree of specificity, which is more legally and politically contested.
Got it. But I think what I'm hearing is that it's quite factual and important to put the first 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences of the second paragraph in there and delete the final sentence. That's what I'm hearing. So
I
a
think
final
I think the
version would
final
look
sentence
like,
is the most problematic.
right. So this would, what we're suggesting to do right now would be to delete this final sentence and leave the rest in. Okay. Any concerns with that? If that's what this is, this edit ends up being, we delete the final sentence, the one I'm highlighting right now. Okay. Let's go ahead and do that as the change, if that's what we can live with. Was there anything else in this conclusion chapter?
Not for me.
Okay. Great. All right, should we just, it's time for a break. Let me just show you what we've got going on here. As we come back from the break, we'll do some public comment. And folks, if you've been joining us today, we're going to be about 5 minutes late on the public comment. I think our agenda says 1 o'clock. We'll do it at like 1:05 or when we get back from our break. Let's just take a 10-minute break. I think the only pending thing, and I haven't been following the chat fully, was if that thing we're going to do about the counties or taking out the counties in the introduction letter, and where risk was. And so I don't know, Leslie Ann and Jared, if you had settled in the chat on a sort of final version of that.
So
Not yet. We'd work on it over the break if you have suggested language, Leslie Ann.
Yeah, because what I've done is I've actually gone back to 1953 so we can get the most accurate pieces in there.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Well, we can take a quick look at that when we come back. So let's take a break now. We can take why don't we take a 13-minute break? Why not? We take a 13-minute break. We'll be back at 10 minutes past the hour. We'll do public comment. Apologies, we'll be 10 minutes late on public comment. And then we'll start getting our exercise going on adoption of the plan. Thanks, everyone. And I really appreciate, we're getting so close. So we'll see you at 10 minutes past the hour. You'd like to make it. Thank you. So we're coming back. We're going to do some public comment. If you've been listening to the meeting today and you're not a counselor and you'd like to make a comment, this is a good time to do it. If you're just joining us for the very first time, the way we do comment is we try to keep them brief in the 2-minute range. And so I'll just, if you want to try to raise your hand, down at the bottom, you can see the raise hand function, or get my attention some other way. I'll just pause here. Anyone, members of the public or others who are joining us today, they would want to make a comment. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing folks raise their hands. So a couple things. One is Leslie Ann and Jared, do you have language now, or do we want to just say as a council, go forth and figure it out, the two of you, and we'll use that language?
If you give me one more sec, David, I just have one more sentence to write, and then I'll finish that in the chat here.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Leslie Ann's doing that. I'll walk through the document that we just were working on, the punch list and the contents of it, just so we're real clear what we will be agreeing to. Okay. So I don't know how easy this is to read for everybody. But the punch list is in the black text and the changes are in the blue text. So we started out with a couple additions that we said yes to. And then in the executive summary, we talked about getting in more clearly the reason behind this effort is, or among the key reasons, is getting people off price fall to fossil fuels. We said yes. There's some language in the economics chapter as well as the emissions reductions chapter. We can crib from that language and make it a little clearer. Okay, but we're going to use existing language we have already in the document, just getting it up in the exec sum. Okay, then in the letter, there was this question around the word should. We made a rewrite that drops that word and just says necessitating a continuation and deepening of multi-state and regional collaboration. Also in the executive summary, we talked about a sort of just improving the language kind of change here with cutting up a couple sentences. We looked at this, and we said yes to this as a way to rewrite some run-on sentences at the beginning. Also in the executive summary, something about Vermont being a role model, we said yes, add in a version of this text that we have lower down in the priority recommendations introduction. So we said yes to that. In the executive summary, we talked about adding a sentence about legacy and overall goal, and we had some beautiful language that's adding in here about sort of lifting our gaze up about what we're really trying to do here. Also in the executive sum, adding in a little phrase talking about the impact of climate change on livelihoods of farm and forestry sector folks. We said yes to adding in a phrase about that. Kelly, do you want to speak about that?
I just wanted to, I think we should make a note. I think the idea that Jael put forward was to put that somewhere in that first paragraph where there's the run-on sentence. But I didn't want to lose where we had talked about putting that note or additional thought.
Jael, if you're there, if you want to say what your vision was on that, just quickly, if we need additional clarity about where that goes. I think it was where we're talking about the impacts of climate, right?
Yeah, like line 12 around there.
Okay, great. Okay, so we agreed to that. There was a few things we looked at in the scientific underpinnings chapter. One is about a table, and we didn't fix this right now, but we did say Jared and Brian could go make sure, however this is labeled, it's labeled accurately. The two of them can agree on that. There was a suggestion while you're at it, like pop the goals higher up. And then, however, don't do anything that would be anything other than clarification beyond today. So that's how we dealt with the table. There was some labeling issues there. And then on the benefit cost analysis, not including health, we agreed on this sentence being added because that is not part of the benefit and cost analysis. And then we agreed on making a change from negative cost, calling it savings. On Carrick's thing, that seemed okay, it's in there. On Ag and Ecosystems, page 4, we agreed that we're going to make a better reference to more up-to-date data. So we'll do that. In the letter from the council, this is what Leslie Ann's going to drop in the chat any moment, or maybe she has while I've been doing this. We'll look at some language in just a second on that. When we talk about our priority recommendations, we're going to more explicitly make sure that every top 10 recommendation references the top 52 recommendation, or in some cases it's 2 of them. Make sure those references are all in there, and we'll also make a reference about the full table at the bottom of the report as well. We're not going to worry about some differences in chapters right now about how pathways are referenced. Maybe there's some cleanup when we have the professional editors in. We changed a sentence that had some awkward "don't work against" language. You can see what it looks like now. Identify revenue sources that don't unnecessarily raise the cost of electricity, et cetera, et cetera. And in the conclusion chapter, we agreed to delete the final sentence of the second paragraph, which was the one about discretion. Okay, that's what we did. Let me just double check. Any concerns about how I've captured the agreements we've worked through today? Okay. I'm happy to wait a little bit here and let Leslie Ann drop some text in the chat. And there it is. I'm just reading this in the same way you all are probably reading this. So Leslie Ann, if I'm clear, you're providing some background information, and then the bottom of the text, bottom of what's in the chat is what you're recommending to be the updated text.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% happy with the actual final sentence, so I can tweak that a little bit as we continue to talk, but I just wanted to get most of this out there because I went back to the FEMA site itself, the one that actually does all the federally declared disaster declarations, which I think is where some of that stuff that was being put on the Rebuild website was coming from. I want to go straight back to the source and pull all of their data. And so that's where those numbers are coming from. And if anybody has a chance to go to the website that I put into it, you'll notice that you have the ability to parse by state and by county. So you'll see where some of these numbers are coming from and why Lamoille County actually has the highest number of disaster declarations, which is in keeping with some of the things that we've been seeing.
Great. Could I, just in the interest of time, say this looks great, and Would the full council be comfortable if Leslie Ann worked with someone, I don't know, Jane or someone, and just finalize this in a way that Leslie Ann feels is accurate as possible? Would anybody have concerns of like essentially saying this is going to be, it's going to be basically this with some, improvements that Leslie Ann and Jane can figure out? Would that be okay? That way it's not like right now, Leslie Ann, you got to, perfect the language under the gun right now. Okay, so this is what I'll do. You can see what I'm about to do. Let me paste this, what you have in here. And then I'll say, wow, I'm not quite sure what just happened there, but it's got kind of exciting.
And lots of thumbs going all over the place, including on the screen and in the chat itself.
Yes. Okay.
David,
So yeah,
sorry to bug. Did you see Chris Campany's
about the
post
heat,
in the chat? Yeah.
right? And add specific.
And thank you, Leslie Ann. Good work, man.
Thanks, Carrick.
Okay. And so in here, excuse me. Would folks be okay with this as a pathway? I don't know quite why it chose that font.
I think it looks fine.
Great. Okay. So let's say this is what's gonna happen, and Leslie Ann can make sure it's massaged to be as accurate as possible, working with Jane. Okay. Thanks, Leslie Ann. Great. So that's it. Anything else in terms of how we captured um, the earlier conversation? Anything else here? Okay. All right. So before we do an exercise, and when I say exercise, I'm actually saying this is a formal process of adoption. This is not like a trial run. This will be an actual. But before we do that, I just want to create an open space here for things that folks would need, anything else folks need to say or have a quick conversation about that would influence the way you vote to adopt or not adopt this plan. I would suggest if you have some things that you want to say in a signing statement, let's hold off on that until after we do this sort of adoption moment. But if there's something that's going to impact the way you vote and impact the way you're going to choose to say you wish to adopt this plan or not to adopt the plan, let's have that conversation right now. If there's something, really makes a difference for the vote itself. And then after we do the exercise and we see what's happened, let's talk about the implications of that. And if you have things you want to say, they're important to say in a signing statement. So if folks are okay with that, just quick check. Anything else we need to say that's going to impact the way you want to vote to adopt or not adopt the plan? Jared?
At the risk of being very unpopular, I just want to share what I'm honestly feeling at this moment, which is I am comfortable taking a straw poll vote on what we know to be the substance that has been written and that the changes that have been agreed to. What I'm not comfortable doing is taking a final vote until we see the final. I want to see the updates on the page, make sure that something wasn't missed accidentally. I don't think there will be. But I would be more comfortable voting on a final version with all of the edits made and accepted rather than if it's going to be a formal vote. And I'm happy to say straw poll, support the main substance and points, But when it comes to formally adopting the plan, I would like to have the edits made and have one more chance to review. The things have been happening fast and furious. Some of this stuff was posted on Friday for a Monday meeting. Some of this we've just changed on the fly. You know, I would flag, and I would hope anyone else would flag any major substantive concerns, which I do not have at this point. But in terms of formally voting to approve a plan, I'd like to have the language as settled as possible, so we all know and feel fully comfortable with what is in front of us that we're voting on.
Okay.
Which my hope would be that we could do that by Thursday for the remaining scheduled, or potentially the reserved meeting time in case it's necessary.
Okay. Kelly?
Two things. One, I should have mentioned this earlier. I realized in the middle of the night that the Just Transitions Guiding Principles from our original climate action plan hadn't been included in our documents. So those were added to the appendix section, and they're on the website now. Thank you, Liz Ambler. They're unchanged from what we had last time, but I wanted to just make sure that everyone was aware that they were there and they're going to be included, and then like linked from other chapters that reference the guiding principles. Two, I had a thought. I don't know if this would help Jared or others who might feel the same as Jared. If we went through what we were going to edit, we all have hopefully a good shared sense of what the changes are going to be. Could we vote with in the good faith that those will be made as we just discussed, but hold Thursday for anybody who's like, hold on, you did not do what we agreed on, red flag? That would make that person probably even less popular, but just a thought to sort of, you know, assume good faith that this is going to come out and it's going to be the way we discussed, but not need to decide on a Thursday meeting now for the official vote.
Thanks, Kelly. Julie?
Yeah, I just want to amplify what Michelle put in the chat, and that I don't think there's value in holding a straw poll vote today if the intention isn't to act. I support what Kelly's saying. I think there's pretty good clarity around what's been agreed to today, and frankly, probably some ability to tweak it if needed, if it misses the mark slightly. I guess I would also say if we want to hold off on a vote until it's final, I suspect we'd have to wait for the proofreading to occur too, just to the extent that there are going to be changes made where the proofreaders may think they're doing something for consistency that others could find objectionable. And so that would take us, I think, well after July 1st, although defer to Jane to give clarity around the timeline there. So I am not inclined to wait. I think we've shown remarkable ability to sort of be true to what agreements we've reached as a group. And I think waiting isn't all that helpful at this point and doesn't change where we're likely to land.
Okay, so we've heard a few folks with some different opinions about what the next step is. I'd be happy if everyone wants to weigh in the chat real quick about your views on this. I think that would be helpful. So here's my instinct on this, folks. I think there's always going to be little nips and tucks and things, and there's going to be edits that the proofreaders are going to do, and we're going to look at those after the proofreaders do it in the coming months. My suggestion is we actually hold a vote now about adopting the plan. And if folks want to reserve the right of coming back and asking that we do it again on Thursday, that folks can ask for that. I think, as Secretary Moore said, I think there's been a lot of good faith built up that when we make notes and we do this, it gets done in that way. And so my recommendation is we would vote. And if someone needs to do it again, we do it again on Thursday. But my guess is let's see where we are, treat it as a vote, and go forward. I'm also just looking at the chat, and I encourage everyone to drop in the chat, all counselors, how you feel about this. Jared?
I would just say I totally agree that the process has worked well to date. I think we have clarity and agreement on the substance and intent of the recommendations and the language in the plan. It's just, you know, there's a hesitance around not having final language in front of us to vote on. But I am comfortable voting today with the recognition that if there is anything that is not just copy editing, that is actually a substantive concern or disagreement that would be identified in the kind of final editing and revision process, that a counselor could bring that forward to be voted on as a plan revision. I don't think that will be necessary because I trust that that process will not uncover those things, but knowing that you know, that something could be lost in translation. You know, sometimes copy editing, we think it's in the interest of clarity, but removing one word changes the intent of a sentence. You know, knowing that, in my understanding is that this would comply with our voting rules, that if one or more counselors identified something that they felt like was not what we agreed to, or the intent was not what was agreed to, that we could bring that up for a formal plan revision. As in, this does not necessarily have to be. Hopefully, it will be the final vote, and nothing like that will be necessary. But it's not like there would not be a recourse if
Yeah.
something like that did come up, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, Jared. Yeah. And as Jade said in the chat as well, like the copy editing that'll happen, you know, after July 1st, anything that's done will be brought back to the council and need to be approved by the council as well. So in addition to a window, if folks feel like we need to do it all over again on Thursday, okay. And anything that happens post July 1st also comes before the council for approval in terms of copy editing and improvements. Okay, so folks, in your email is a SurveyMonkey link. If anybody doesn't have it, I can drop it to you directly in the chat. So if you can all go check your email, you should have a SurveyMonkey link from me. And it asks two questions. It asks your name and asks whether you vote to adopt the plan, the updated climate action plan, yes or no. And yes is to adopt, no is to not adopt. If anybody needs for me to drop it to them in the chat, let me know. I can direct chat you with that link. But it should be waiting for you in your email.
Don't have the email, would you please, David?
I'll
Please,
drop it to
please.
you. Yeah,
Thank
give
you.
me 1 sec.
Yep.
And
Thank you.
anybody else, let me know if there's any email issues.
I'm sorry for asking this clarity question, David. Are we voting now and then talking about?
Signing statements, yes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to stop here.
Nope, that's exactly what I was going to ask.
Yeah, let's vote now. And then let's talk about our signing statements if you have something that you think is important to say. All right, Carrick, you should have that in your Zoom chat right now. Anybody else need a direct link over Zoom if they're having trouble with my email?
Leslie Ann had her hand up, David.
Oh, shoot, Leslie Ann.
I think I must have clicked the wrong button somewhere, so consider it a down hand.
You're good. Okay, great. All right, so everybody jump in there. Don't be shy. Go ahead, answer that question, type in your name, and then answer the yes or no to adopt. Just give it a moment more. I have 18 responses. I'm not sure how many counselors are on the call right now. I'll give it a second more. Okay. I'm sharing my screen. I'm showing that 72% of you, 13 out of 18, said yes to adopt the plan. 5 said no. Based on the rules of the Global Warming Solutions Act, that constitutes approval. You need to clear a majority threshold. It's also nice to see more than 2/3 getting towards 3/4. I can run a report that can show who did what, but in the interest of time, I'll just say that vote allows you to approve this updated climate action plan. So A, fantastic. Congratulations. That was a lot of work. B, let's open up some space in the time we have now. If folks want to reflect on some of the things they'd like to say in a signing statement, or other things they want to say as we finish up our work here today. Michelle, I see your hand up. Over to you.
Thank you, David, and thank you to fellow counselors. This has been an incredibly labor-intensive effort for everyone, and everyone brought forth their best work on this, and I appreciate that. And I want to lower my hand. There we go.
Yeah.
My vote is a dismayed no vote. Counselors and staff to the council have worked incredibly hard, as I noted, both on the plan update as well as the numerous related plans and analyses, which are the underpinning of this work. The Agency of Transportation will continue to work towards advancement of the objectives of the plan in the constraints before us in the transportation sector at the federal, state, and market levels. I have grave reservations that the advancement of transportation emissions reduction is being significantly undermined by federal policies, funding, and tax credit elimination, as well as the scarcity of state funding to continue incentive programs and advancement of EV charging infrastructure. Each of these are tied together in driving market forces, which impact the availability of electric vehicles, the stability and continuation of the build out of charging networks and charging providers' business models, as well as the uptake of vehicles due to availability, affordability, and operational uncertainty. And funding alone is not going to move us back to the progressive trajectory we've been on. It will take both funding and policy mechanisms in alignment at the federal and state level to make significant progress in the transportation sector. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for sharing that. Chris?
Thanks to everybody for their good and hard work on this, and the continuing to build upon the initial plan. This was all a major undertaking. I voted yes, and I'm going to be writing a, I guess an explainer or something. I represent municipal governments, even I'm a regional planning commission director. But what I'm going to basically be saying is, I don't think we can know, but also I don't think it's been fully understood by towns what's coming, or like what's here and what's coming, and especially in terms of future disaster recovery. The amount of money towns are going to have to probably be footing on their own. Probably the lack of available federal resources coming in. Significant enough size disaster, the state's going to have to deal with their own assets, and towns are going to have to deal with their own. So I'm just going to be basically making a statement saying that We need to be, a lot of what we've discussed here is about state policy, state costs, and costs for Vermonters. We really haven't gotten much into municipal costs, and I just kind of want to just give some voice to that. Also expressing it's just we don't know, but we can kind of see what's happening elsewhere in the country about what's happening. I mean, just the loss of the hazard mitigation grant program funding, as well as the BRIC program. It's my understanding that in all the disaster declarations that the president signed over the last weeks, not a single one has received hazard mitigation grant program funding. And that is a huge source of funding for municipalities as well as the state. So I don't think people, and not people aren't ignorant, it's just if you don't live in this space, it's kind of hard to understand what might be coming. So I just kind of want to give some voice to that. And it also goes to my point that I've made. I'm not at all diminishing the need and the priority for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but I also just feel like it's important to recognize just the absolute, immediate term outlays of money that are likely coming. Maybe we'll get a break for a few years, but what's happened, and the hundreds of millions of dollars that has cost, and then what's happened at the household and business level, and the people who are still displaced. So just want to give some voice to that. But again, really appreciate all the work that everybody's done in this, and it seems like the I guess esprit de corps among folk, the collaboration's been really good on this one.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate those thoughts. Julie?
Yeah, I've been working on a signing statement, have talked to many counselors, both within the administration team as well as a number of other folks, and know that Carrick has also done some outreach. But just, happy to share the signing statement around to the extent others may be interested in joining on. But I would say the kind of the key messages I think are important to have ride companion with the climate plan is acknowledging the end, the abrupt end of unprecedented federal investment. Michelle had some very specific pieces in the transportation space, but I think that is broadly true. Acknowledging the negative impacts that are already being experienced, including making many of the points Chris just made about hundreds of millions of dollars in damages over the past several years, and the capacity of individuals and businesses and municipalities to be able to essentially survive many of those impacts. Acknowledging that there is this really extraordinary effort that has taken place, and a lot of good ideas that are reflected in the revised plan, but that there also remains what I think is a significant gap between those actions and how we can operationalize, or what it will take to operationalize the work. That we need solutions that are both environmentally effective and economically sustainable. And I don't think that there's a clear pathway for resolving that tension right now. I think it's important to acknowledge that climate impacts and climate change is not occurring. Is not the only big hairy thing, I guess, facing the state of Vermont at this moment, from education reform to electric grid transformation to housing crisis to healthcare costs and public safety. Like, there are a lot of big societal challenges on our collective plates right now, and need to be thinking about an implementation strategy that isn't blind to the fact there are other demands being placed on the finite financial capacity of Vermonters. And then I think, just an acknowledgement that despite extensive outreach efforts, I would offer we are still continuing to struggle to reach a broad cross-section of Vermonters, and are hearing primarily from those already committed to climate action, and just that incredible need to continue engagement, so that we can earn the broad support from the public necessary to actually sustain this work in the long term. And as I say, if folks are interested in taking a closer look at words on the page, I'm happy to share that around.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, and folks, do take Julie up if you'd like to see those. how that statement she's preparing. Sarah.
Though I am relatively new to the council, starting back in November with all of you, I have great admiration and am in awe of the work that counselors have done over the last several months. That extends down to the subcommittee members, the staff across all of our agencies, and probably within your organizations that have been supporting this effort, as well as the public engagement process. I had not participated in one like that before, and I want to give kudos to all of the staff members and counselors that participated with the public in those open dialogues. However, unfortunately, I did have to vote no on this plan, really coming from an affordability lens. As I look across the landscape, federal uncertainty, and multiple competing priorities that are facing Vermont, I had to vote no on today's action plan. But I do look forward to continuing to work with this group to continue our efforts.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Anyone else want to share something, a reflection? Maybe it's going to end up in a signing statement, maybe it's not, but some sort of reflection at the end here, Kelly?
I just wanted to second the commendation on the public engagement. I was just really pleased with how it went and just so much improvement from the first round. So thank you to everybody who helped make that happen. I just wanted to double down on that. That was a great effort.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah. Jared?
Thanks, David. Yeah, like others, I just want to recognize the immense amount of work and dedication that has gone into this, not just over the last year, but since the formation of this council. This plan is really an update to a prior plan, and we built on that work as well, including all the folks who are past counselors who've served on subcommittees, who provided public comment either in person or online. And while it feels like the end of a process, I do plan to provide a signing statement, and I will share that with folks. And the main message of that is that a plan alone, while necessary, is not sufficient. A plan alone does not reduce pollution, it does not build resilience, and it does not reduce costs. And so the key going forward will be whether and how it is implemented. And so to me, this is not the end point. It's just a waypoint, and there is a lot of really important action left to ensure that the goals of the plan are realized. So thank you.
Thanks, Jared. Yeah. Anyone else before we wrap up? Leslie Ann?
So I just wanted to echo a lot of all of the sentiments that have been raised before, and I think we're at a very, very interesting point in time in history from so many different perspectives. And I guess the seat that I sit in and bring the sort of local to national perspective and a lot of not just the climate information, the climate change information, the funding information, and all those things that seem to be changing by the day. And I would love to offer up a point of hope moving forward, because it can feel so burdensome and it can feel so challenging. But how do we step forward in a way that makes sure that everybody's at the table and everybody is being taken care of? And the affordability piece is huge. It's hugely critical. And I just wanted to give a shout out for the entire process this time around, which was so uplifting. I think we struggled last time and there were some challenges, and I just wanted to give a shout out to all of the folks, not just around these Hollywood squares here, all of the folks in the background who we never see, all of the hard work that went into all of this. And I just wanted to end with some sort of hope, because as we know, it's not the end, but it's beginning of trying to move forward. And the slope might be like this for now, but hopefully it will sort of level out and get to some terraces at some point. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Leslie Ann. So nice. Yeah. Carrick?
Okay, I wasn't planning on it, but one thing first, David, thank you. I've been through several of these with different kind of people in your role, and you did a very good job. So I'm grateful for that. So well done. So that was the one new thing because I thought Leslie Ann said it beautifully, but just being from Tuscany and doing this, that's above and beyond. So really, thank you, David, for your passion and your commitment to honesty. I mean, that's the thing that really struck me. Just a couple of things. I happen to have voted yes on this plan, but it's yes with reservations for all the things I have been coming to learn in my brief time here, about 4 or 5 months that I've been in this position. And part of what I am going to be seeking going forward is what I'm hopeful for is you didn't hear anything from me that you thought was out of, I guess I would say, out of touch or out of character, but I think all of us just have same priorities, but maybe differently weighted. And for me now, seeing some of the real pressures that are hitting electricity ratepayers and how that is showing up on cutoffs, on arrearages, on people having trouble paying their bills right now. And from my vantage point, seeing what's coming from the regional and other levels, there's real challenges. But that means it's a great time to try and get good stuff done. So I get it with regards to the criticality. I also get it with regards to criticality and climate. In fact, it's incredibly concerning. But one other last thing I would say that I also hadn't heard is that there is quite a percentage of Vermonters who felt that this country, our state, was on the wrong track and chose some leadership that maybe I wouldn't have chosen that has demonstrably changed the direction of this country and the kind of resources we have to bring to bear on this. I don't want to lose more people to that. So the more we can demonstrate and that we are walking in their shoes and earn public support and build on that for our work going forward, I think it's the better for all of us, because being out of touch only radicalizes those who we're seeking to engage in the effort. And I'm thinking especially in the middle, low income folks, people in my family and people I live, work, and play and worship with. Those are the people I'm wondering that haven't yet had the real opportunity to have that voice. So if some small way, if we can do that as we make progress, then that's, to me, is the real sweet spot that we can hit. So thanks.
Thanks, Carrick. Yeah. There's some great, powerful reflections. I appreciate everybody really doing this. It's so tricky to do this on Zoom and end like this. And so, I think we're doing as best as we can, being heartfelt and real in a Zoom space like this. And so thank you, everyone. As we wrap up here, just a few words about what comes next. As we mentioned before we did this voting exercise, if someone feels they need to do this again on Thursday, please let us know. We're holding that meeting, but we don't need that meeting unless it gets activated. So please let us know ASAP. We will be trying to make the edits and the notes that I showed on the screen as soon as possible so that folks can see what that looks like. I think, and if something's on your plate, for instance, like Jared and Brian working on a table, let's try to do that ASAP so that there's not stuff hanging out there. Then in terms of us meeting again, I think the steering committee probably is going to need to set a timeline of what comes next. Jane can talk a little bit about the practicalities of turning this over to the legislature to meet our July 1st deadline. So Jane, if there's anything you want to say about that in terms of the practicalities of getting this content over to the legislature, that would be great.
It's not actually, Secretary Moore, others should correct me, but unlike when we produce our ledge reports and have a formal response, and commitment to where we send those. This is a little different. We maintain an email distribution list that we copy key legislators on and reports when we do those annually on behalf of the council. I expect we'll use the same distribution list on July 1st to distribute the link to the page where this plan lives and create some contextual language around the revisions that are still occurring over the summer, including the proofreading, the plain language summary and edits, etc. But beyond that, I don't see it as much more than that. So if folks have other visions, please let us know. And I see Julie's hand is up, so she might course correct anything I've said. What I did want to just note in the chat that we will plan as ourselves responsible for some of the chapters, and then with others, I think that all revisions should be posted and final documents by end of day on Wednesday. That way, if any counselor wants to, let's call it petition the climate office and David to hold the meeting on Thursday, we'll know that that need is there. Otherwise, my expectation is the meeting on Thursday is canceled. I just want to say this out loud to be crystal clear. And then Liz and myself will work with David and the steering committee to set up a steering committee meeting in July that will talk about the Climate Council schedule for the fall and beyond, and the work planning to look at that. But my understanding and expectation is, unless we hear otherwise, we'll finalize the documents Wednesday. We'll forward that to the appropriate place. I expect Julie to make some comments on that now. We will cancel Thursday's meeting, have a steering committee meeting in July, and look not to convene the council again until September. So those are all things I'm checking right now. So hope that all makes sense.
Thanks, Jane. And Julie?
Yeah, just the way the statute is set up, we adopt the plan, but it's not actually a legislative report. So I think what Jane laid out is accurate. And just before sort of it gets posted, we'll put out a very brief press release, just making Vermonters aware it's available, but want to wait to have the signing statements appended to it before doing that. So I suspect that'll be planned to go out on or about July 1st, and can certainly provide notice to anyone who's participated along the way through the email distribution list. But it doesn't have to get filed like many other formal reports we submit to the legislature.
Okay, great. Liz?
Great. Thanks, everybody. And just reiterating what everyone said about all the thanks in the chat. Can we have a little bit more concrete direction and clarity around the signing statements? When do you need them in order to get them in that link? And maybe more importantly, at least from my point of view, hearing that Julie's going to send around what the admin does after I'm sure others weigh in and maybe further tweaks on it from what I had heard about. Will those be posted somewhere? Like I appreciate Michelle putting her signing statement on the no in the chat, but yeah, are we like if I do a short one on utilities, is there a place I can give it so you all can take a look?
That's a question. That's a good question, Liz. I will speak purely to the deadlines. Liz and I just discussed Monday, June 30th by noon for final signing statements that would be posted by the end of the day on Monday, so that as of July 1st, the plan is posted as final with signing statements as appendices. If folks want to collaborate between now and then on signing statements, I'll leave it. Perhaps David, I mean, we're happy. I don't actually have a clear path on how we would handle that, besides counselors working independently together. So if someone has a suggestion, happy to help facilitate that if needed.
So the way we stay out of trouble is by not responding to each other over email. We can share information over email. And if you send it to me, or Liz Amler, she can send information out. So we stay out of trouble as long as we don't have a conversation over email. That's my understanding.
Yeah,
so
that's about quorum, David. So I guess my suggestion, if folks are feeling a need to collaborate on signing statements beyond the handful that I know are already working intentionally together, then I would ask that we set a date that they would all come to Liz, and we would send those out as a batch of signing statements, and then ask you to coordinate by that independently. Like if, say, Julie has a signing statement, it's final by Wednesday afternoon this week, as are all the other independent ones. Then Liz can send out the 5 different signing statements, and it's a point of contact for each signing statement, and say, if you're interested in signing on to the one drafted by Julie, let Julie know. And then if you're interested in the utility one, let Liz know. And then Liz's responsibility, or Julie's, by the Monday date, which we would put in the email too, would be to send us final statements and who is signing on to those statements, so that we can accurately reflect them.
That sounds like a good plan to me, Jane. I don't know if,
Let's
Liz
say
Miller.
by
Yeah.
Wednesday, end of day, unless others, that way people have 2 business days to, and you have to let the lead author know by Friday if you're signing on with them.
Yeah. Okay, that's a helpful thing. All right. So we're starting to lose folks because we're a little over time. I agree, like, I'm glad we did this clarifying on the signing statements. Thank you, Liz Miller, for prompting that. And so we're holding the call still for Thursday in case, but we expect not to use it unless we get some urgent requests to do it. Again, the point there is mostly about something that would really almost change your vote, right? There's going to be some back and forth on language, even with the copy editors over the summer. And so that's a pretty high bar for Thursday, but it's there. If counselors want it, let us know. And we'll make sure everybody shows up. I think that's it, everyone. Am I forgetting anything? I'll say my thanks for everyone as well. So much time goes into this. It is so epically long and hard to make it work. And so you did it, and you got a very thoughtful plan. And I think you showed it's possible on the recommendations to reach a high level of consensus about what is really needed in Vermont on these issues. And so congratulations to all of you for doing that. And you got it over the finish line. So thanks, everyone. Perhaps we'll see you on Thursday, perhaps not. And steering committee will be meeting to figure out a plan in the coming months. All right, take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.